Welcome to Wisdom Talk Radio, a collaborative community of explorers in conscious living. If you enjoy plumbing the deeper mysteries of yoga and astrology, are curious about Sanskrit, especially for the impact and importance in today's world, I invite you to join me today. My guest brings profound wisdom from her in-depth study, experience, and teaching to awaken your higher purpose. I'm Laurie Seymour, host of Wisdom Talk Radio and CEO and founder of the Baca Institute. Head there to discover your creative advantage by taking the Creative Innovator Quiz. Find out your personal style so you can open your creative flow and make everything in life easier. Learn to optimize your ability to create more in less time while enjoying every minute. Named one of the top 75 yogis who are shifting the planet by Origin magazine, Dr. Katy Jane is a Sanskrit and Vedic scholar and skilled Jyotishi, Vedic, which means Vedic astrologer, who traveled India interviewing saints and yogis for her doctoral research. She gives training in Sanskrit, the Vedas, and classical yoga to help yoga practitioners access the wisdom teachings at the core of their practice. She also coaches seekers at crucial transitions to develop successful life strategies with the guiding light of Jyotisha. She divides her time between the United States and India, where she leads spiritual retreats to the holy Himalayas. Welcome, Dr. Katy Jane.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, Laurie.
I'm excited to have you. This is like a special treat for me to be able to have someone who has the kind of breadth and depth that you have. I've been reading up on you, and so that we can go wherever we need to go today. This isn't about so much skimming the surface. Lots of people think they know lots and do perhaps about astrology, about yoga, and I'd like us to be able to take this into a deeper level of conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all there. My favorite thing.
Oh, good.
Deep.
Oh, good. Me too. Juicy conversations. However, having said all of that, it would be great if you could give us a kind of foundation of speaking a little bit to the difference between Vedic astrology and Western astrology.
That's a great question. That's usually what people want to know about when they hear what I do. Because usually people think there's only one kind of astrology. Sometimes my clients will say, well, what's the difference between Vedic astrology and regular astrology? And what they mean by regular astrology is often called Western astrology, and I'll explain what that means in a moment. But it refers to a tropical system or a tropical style of astrology, which is sun-centric. So if we're sitting on the earth and we look up at the sky, we notice that the sun changes position every month. It changes 12 different positions in the year. And that observation in general forms the basis for Western or tropical astrology. But to get into all the distinctions between how we calculate the zodiac, see, this is why people ask this question, but they don't really want to ask this question.
They don't really want the details.
They really don't want the details because I've been asked this question for 20 years, all the time. And when I start to go into it, I get that glazed over look, like, whoops, I asked the wrong question. So to answer this in a way that I think people really want to know, which is what does it give me that's different than my Western horoscope? And I think the answer lies in a difference in philosophy, a difference in the way that we see the individual.
Hmm.
Western astrology arises out of the Hellenic world, the Greek world,
Mhm.
and the Arabic world, the great basis for the monotheistic traditions,
Mhm.
which puts the individual at the center. Just like the sun is at the center of
Mhm.
Western astrology, the individual is at the center of Hellenic philosophy. I mean, look at Greek sculpture. It's all the celebration of the human.
Mhm.
Vedic astrology is rooted in a very different calculation of the zodiac, which I won't go too much into, but
Mhm.
it's based not on the sun, but on 27 fixed star constellations that form a
Mm.
halo around the earth. Why they chose the 27 to form this zodiac out of the billions and gazillions of possibilities, that's a great mystery, or maybe some obscure scholar has done that research. But more importantly, that calculation of the zodiac tells us what the Vedic civilization of India, perhaps the longest enduring civilization on the earth,
Mhm.
even though many of the ancient civilizations possessed astrological ways of seeing and knowing, the Indian system is perhaps the oldest surviving in the world. And
Mhm.
it's based on, the Vedic astrological tradition is based on the worldview of the Veda. The Veda is the philosophical and spiritual and cultural basis for the enduring civilization of India. I mean, you can
Mhm.
even see the Veda in Bollywood dancing nowadays. I mean,
Right.
you can see the persistence of these wisdom teachings. And again, this is a big complicated subject, but the Veda are the wisdom teachings that were revealed as the reality of the universe, revealed to the sages of the Veda, called the rishis or the seers, from
Mhm.
which we get Vedic astrology. But the wisdom teachings, or the revealed knowledge, teach us something about the universe that is really spectacular. And that is that this is an undifferentiated, unified field. There is no
Mhm.
point that is fundamentally separate from any other point. When we go into the nuances of Vedic astrology and the Vedic worldview in general, it's mind-blowing how these ancient people could know this without any evidence of high-powered telescopes or other instruments of measurement. How could they know it? The teachings tell us that they knew it from sitting quiet, or by sitting quiet,
Mm.
because we are a snapshot of the universe. The universe exists within us. It exists in every part, every atom of the universe is a replica of the whole. So what Vedic astrology gives us, that's a little different perhaps than Western astrology, is not so much who we are as an individual, but how we connect to the whole.
That
The
is
and this
beautiful.
and this is related to the word that you asked me at the beginning. How do I pronounce Jyotisha? Jyotisha is the Sanskrit word for Vedic astrology, and I often have a problem with the word astrology. I wish it was a different word, because Jyotisha doesn't really translate into astrology as we understand it in our post-Descartes worldview in the
Mhm.
West, right?
Mhm.
Which is the mind and the body are separate. Um, Jyotisha is, like I said, related to the holistic system of the Veda, and it means to enlighten or to cast light upon.
Mm.
It's the eye that sees our fundamental inherent connection with the intelligent field, that you are really a drop of the eternal. So Jyotisha teaches us more than whether I'm going to be successful in a particular career, or when my
Mhm.
fortune is going to come in, or as a predictive, superstitious, fatalistic, even spiritual bypassing kind of system. It's not that at all. I mean, the thing that drives me crazy about astrology is this notion that we're victims of the planets.
Mhm.
Oh, it's all because of Saturn. Right now, it's the big gossip is the Pluto transit,
Mhm.
and all the doom and gloom that it's going to bring us. And this is just not at all what Jyotisha implies. Jyotisha is to culture your free will, and the
Mhm.
one place that you have free will, which is where you'll put your attention.
Mhm.
Jyoti has to do, Jyotisha, or the word Jyoti means intuition or insight, the most subtle part of your psychology that determines what you'll see. And in physics, I mean, the Vedic
That's what I
philosophy
wanted you
is
to speak to,
so
because
much
that's
like physics.
absolutely. I'm listening to you, and because I speak a lot about the
Yes,
current research in what the physicists have brought through, and the undifferentiated field, and
yes.
the what I call the field of potentiality. You're speaking the same language.
It's yes, it's fascinating, which is why I was so excited to be on your show after I listened to your previous episodes. Is I was like, oh yes, this is exactly what I want to talk about.
Mhm.
So yes, so and especially we don't think about it when we think of the ancient world. We think of quantum physics as something latest and new.
Mhm.
But when we really excavate the Vedic teachings and understand what they imply, it really is a very similar system. And especially when we
Mhm.
get into the application of that philosophy, which is Jyotisha or Vedic astrology.
Yeah.
And it's based on this notion in physics that the seer or the observer,
Mhm.
in the process of observing, alters that which is observed.
Mhm.
This is exactly what we do in Jyotisha. We shift something that we're often very unconscious about, and that is our sense of self-perception. Who we are, who am I,
Mhm.
is probably the most profound question anybody could ask.
And then
Who
who
am
how and then how are we connected in the greater universe?
right? It's inherent in that question.
Mhm.
When you start going into the layers and layers of yourself after you've gotten past, well, I'm a friend, I'm a woman, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a da, 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 then you get into the deeper layers.
Mhm.
But what we often miss in life is how much we are projected upon from the moment we're born. You're born, oh, it's a girl, it's a boy, let's call her Laurie. And then let's heap all kinds of projections about what a valuable, successful life looks like
Mhm.
in your culture, in your family, in your religion, in your whole context. And we spend our whole life trying to meet up with that or match that
Mhm.
projection.
Yes. And
And yet,
stop learning about who we really are.
right, we're using our free will, the only place that we really have free will,
Mm.
which is the power of our perspective, the power of our attention. And we're putting it on trying to fulfill these impossible, in many cases, projections upon us of value. They're made in ignorance. And
Yeah.
the Buddha tells us in the first rung or the first step of the Noble Eightfold Path that the correction to ignorance is right view, seeing clearly what the truth is of who you are. This is why in traditional India, when a child is born, the Jyotishi or the Vedic astrologer is consulted So the parents understand, okay, who do we have here? What's the owner's manual for this life? And how can we, of all the range of places that you can put your attention on, how can we direct the attention to the highest possibility that
Mhm.
this life has to offer?
Yeah.
That's the one thing that really changes your life, and which is why I think Vedic astrology is such a powerful healing modality.
And also, it strikes me how incredibly useful that could be in parenting in the Western world.
Yes.
And do you do anything with that? I mean, is that something that you ever bring to parents?
Yes, absolutely. I love reading the charts of children and newborn children, and I think that they're extremely blessed
Mhm.
when their parents choose this for them, because they have an advantage that so many of us didn't have,
Right.
which is I should back up a little bit when I'm talking about this, that that when I read the chart of a child, or anybody for that matter, it's not another projection. It's not another belief to latch onto. Oh, the astrologer said this about me, so it must be true.
Mm-hmm.
What I love about this system is that it's self-referral. It's self-referential.
Say more about that.
So, suppose I say to you that you have these particular skills, like your core power, for example,
Mhm.
is that you can never lose. And usually people who have this core power always believe that they can lose.
Mhm.
So I say to them, You don't have to believe me. This isn't a belief system. This is something to observe in yourself.
Mm. Which is very
Is
different.
It's very different.
Yeah.
Is it true? Is it not true? Can you validate it in your experience? And then the person goes back through their life and says, yes, I can see that. And then that positive inherent power that was with them from the moment they were born gets reinforced.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's a similar thing with parents. And I have done quite a few readings over the years for
Mhm.
children, and I've seen them grow up because I've been doing this work for over 20 years now. So a lot of these kids are now adults. And what's
Mhm.
fascinating to me is to see how their parents could recognize the truth of those, or the reality of those qualities, and then encourage them along,
Yes. Yeah.
and point them, and not impose upon them, but guide them in the way that can really.
Well, we just had an interesting experience. You might have noticed a kind of an abrupt pause in what wisdom Katie was sharing with us. And that's because her entire network, where she is right now in the neighborhood, went down. But we've got her back. We've got you back. I'm so glad.
I probably was just talking about the big Pluto transit or something, and then, like, as a
And that
sign.
we're not a victim.
Yeah, and we're not a victim, exactly. And then yet, you know, these planets make their presence known
In different ways. Yes.
in different ways.
I actually wanted to pick something up because I know we can't really go back to where we were.
Yeah,
We've had, it's been, I don't know, 20 minutes maybe that
yeah,
you were trying to get back on.
yeah.
But I wanted to bring up something, or touch on something that you said earlier, about um, how we are a snapshot of the universe, and um, that we're this individual, but we're not just this individual. We're really connected with everything. And it made me think about holograms,
Yes,
and that each of us are really a hologram of the whole.
yes, yes. Yes, and it's really interesting, I think, in this regard, to look at family constellations,
Mm,
people that are all connected. I find this really interesting, that amongst my students and clients, I tend to attract the same kind of people over and over again. Or if I read charts of people all in the same family, you can really see that they're almost the same person, that they have so much in common that they could only be related.
Mm.
I think the surprising thing is that we actually think we're separate. That I think is the surprising
Yeah,
thing.
like
It's
once
not
you
so much
are
that
immersed
we're
in
connected.
it.
It's that we think that we're alone and isolated.
Yeah, which is so prevalent in the Western world. I mean, everything in the Western world is about the individual. Well, at
Yes.
least certainly in the US, it's
Yeah.
the
Oh,
individual above
definitely.
everything. Other
Def
countries, have more or less of a either familial or collective sense. And yet so much of what's happening right now feels like it has to do with new frequencies around the collective and a ways to bring people together, ways to come together.
Yes, and I think that one of the things that the pandemic has taught us is that very thing, that the smallest of the small impacts the largest of the large.
Mm.
I think probably at this point, nobody wants to hear that phrase again, we're all in it together, because of course, not all of us are having an equal experience of this
Mhm.
pandemic, but on a less perhaps political perspective,
Mhm.
what this has shown us is that all of our small choices or all of our individual choices impact everybody else.
Yeah. Yes, yes. Yes.
It's not just philosophy. I mean, it's fun philosophy, but it's actually the truth that we're
Mhm.
really experiencing.
On a
And I think
cellular level.
on a cellular level, that we are no greater than the least amongst us. If
Mhm.
one is suffering, we're all suffering. And I think that this is the theme perhaps of the Pluto transit for the
Mm.
next 20 years
Mhm.
in sidereal Capricorn. And that's where we get a little bit of the difference between Western astrology and Vedic astrology.
Mhm.
The Western astrologers are declaring this the age of Aquarius. Um, but from the actual way that the zodiac is arrayed, this is all taking place not in Aquarius, but in Capricorn. And Capricorn
Ah.
is big. It's the whole earth. It's an
Mhm.
earth sign, but it's a diffusive earth sign. So it represents earth on a large scale. And um, and what with all these planets, especially at the beginning of 2021, impacting the sign of Capricorn, the whole world is being reshaped, configured. Our structures, our institutions, everything is
Mm.
stepping into a new paradigm,
Wow. And how do we
to
explore
say
that?
the
Yeah,
least.
to say the least. And it, that new paradigm, I mean, changes everything. In other words, I'm right now creating a new program for this year. I say
Mm,
creating, it's like it's being created through me, but it's very much
mhm.
around this new paradigm. And I have no idea yet what it's really going to look like. I have senses of the way in which it's connected to that sense of the whole.
Yes.
But it's very, and then how do you market something when people are thinking about themselves as, oh, I've got to work on myself.
Right. It's really true. I think that we're not going to really see the implications
Mm,
of everything that is changing in our world right now
mhm.
until the children who are born now
Yes.
come of age. And it
Mhm.
will be the end of this particular Pluto transit, 20 years.
Mhm.
When these children are 20 years old, hopefully we're still around, some of us oldies, will be able to really marvel at what this pivotal moment in history brought
Mhm.
us.
Yeah.
It's their world that's being created. The best we can do is to leave it in as best shape as we can for them.
Hmm. We're trying. We're trying.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about um, the sound of Sanskrit.
Hmm.
Um, a dear friend of mine, Ellen Cole, has been teaching Sanskrit, and she comes out of the same teaching and tradition that I do. And certainly Tureya,
Hmm.
which is what I was initiated in as a master, um, is based on a Sanskrit word. So, but the sound of Sanskrit, I'm very attuned to sound, and I'd love you to speak to the power of that. It's something I know you work with a lot.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I was excited when I saw that in your biography about your interest in sound and vibration and sound healing and all that. And yes, when we compare the Veda to physics, then Sanskrit becomes really interesting. So how to make this brief, how to make such a big subject brief
Really.
and understandable. So
Mhm.
the understanding in the Vedic worldview is that everything is at its source vibration.
Yes.
Everything is made up of sound, everything is vibrating. This is kind of string theory in
Mhm.
for those of us who are hack physicists. This is kind of an equation with string theory, but this notion that everything's vibrational, but that we actually possess clairaudient abilities as humans to be able to hear those sounds and see them. We
Mhm.
possess clairaudient and clairvoyant abilities in our highest nervous system expression, such that we can actually hear those and see those vibrations and repeat them in our speech.
Mm.
And when we repeat them in our speech, we enter into yoga with them. This is the original yoga, to enter into relationship, into union with creation at its source through what it's made up of, which is strings of sound. So the Veda, sometimes if any of you are have heard of the Veda, you'll hear it mentioned as a set of scriptures or texts.
Mhm.
And this is actually a misnomer. What the Veda is, the four quote unquote books of the Veda
Mhm.
are ongoing strings of sound that were once heard and seen by these ancient sages known as rishis or seers,
Mhm.
who heard and saw them and recorded them in their speech and created a system of maintaining this orally for
Mhm.
generation to generation. So the Veda has been passed down, these this collection or these collections of the actual sound bites that make up reality, have been passed down for thousands and thousands of years from teacher to student in highly guarded lineages,
Mhm.
that form what are called the texts of the Veda. And these strings of sound are the sounds of Sanskrit. So some of us know Sanskrit is a language, but really Sanskrit is a technology. It's a technology for aligning your consciousness with the intelligent field of undifferentiated consciousness, which is the unified field. So a mantra, which is the smallest unit of sound in Sanskrit, has the ability to awaken your nervous system or open the channels of your nervous system such that you can then vibrate with the frequency of that sound that then corresponds with certain structures in creation.
So,
So
I mean, there's so many things I want
there's so many things to
to ask,
talk about just in that. Yeah.
oh my goodness, yes. Um, I was sitting here going, well, okay, which thread do I want to pick up there? And which thread do I want to save for a later conversation with you?
Yeah.
So, so these threads of reality, we could say, threads of
Mm.
consciousness, threads of creation. What are they?
Well, in the Vedic tradition, we could compare them to, they're called Deva and Devi,
Mm-hmm.
which translate in English as God or goddess. But what they are the laws of nature. So
Mm-hmm.
Deva means God, but it's the masculine principle.
Mm-hmm.
In the Vedic tradition, the masculine principle is the potential of something. The
Mm-hmm.
feminine principle is the actualization of the potential. So, for example, the appearance of a rain cloud would be Deva, would be the potential for rain. But the actual raining would be Devi, the feminine
Mm-hmm.
activization process. So we could, in terms of the Vedic mantras or invocations, the content of the
Mm-hmm.
Vedic quote unquote scriptures, they're divided into these two principles, these two expressions of the laws of nature, potential and actual. That if I were proficient enough in my alignment with nature at its source, I could just speak these things into being. I could invoke the potential of rain, and I could
Mm-hmm.
invoke the actual rain. I can invoke the potential for a good year of harvest, and then I can invoke the actual harvest. The value or the purpose of these invocations is to put the individual and the society at large in perfect alignment with the natural unfolding rhythm of creation. The actual word rhythm is a Sanskrit word rita, which is the word for the ongoing ritambara, the ongoing flow of creation on its vibrational level. In later traditions of the Veda, this is called dharma,
Mm-hmm.
or your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
In Vedic astrology, when people talk about their purpose, what is meant by that is your dharma, how you are most naturally aligned with the ongoing flow of your particular expression of destiny.
Mm-hmm. Using the what I speak about as inner law,
Inner law, beautiful,
which is very
yes.
different than what we know of as man's law.
So Sanskrit is the technique to tap into that field.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting in this regard is, in connection to Vedic astrology, is how a name is chosen for a child, for
Mm-hmm.
example. So in traditional India, you can always tell which star the moon was transiting when a child was born,
Mm-hmm.
because their name will have the Sanskrit syllable that's connected with their star in it.
Mm.
Each one of the stars and planets, actually every aspect of creation, has a sound quality to it. So all the 27 stars of the Vedic zodiac have particular sounds that are connected to them. So when you name your child a name with those sounds and you say their name, you're constantly affirming their connection.
Yeah, and you're
Their
calling that forth, really.
yes, yes. You're calling it forth. You're invoking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I love how you speak about Sanskrit as a technology to align our consciousness. Really, I work with what are called higher consciousness energy symbols.
Mm.
So I'm trying to see these cross connections, because I also speak about those as like the
Mm.
installation of an app or a technology that allows us to align with that creative field of potentiality.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm hearing you say really the very, very same thing. And on that level of sound, but it's all vibration. It's all frequency.
Yes. And many, many ancient cultures also have tapped into this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of the Lakota Nation in America. They have a ceremony called the Blessing Way. Not the Lakota, sorry, the Navajo Diné culture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm sure the Lakota have something like this also, but I know of the Blessing Way ceremony in the Diné culture, or not the
Navajo.
Arapaho, the Navajo.
Mm-hmm.
In the Blessing Way, it's the same thing. It's like the whole universe is sung into being.
Yeah.
Same thing in Hebrew. The whole world was spoken into being.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
God spoke and said, "Let there be light."
Mm-hmm.
And so this is something that has been known from many, many different perspectives. I wouldn't say that this is something that's privileged by the Vedic tradition. It's
Mm-hmm.
just that by some historical anomaly, the Vedic culture, the Indian culture, though they were conquered many times, they were not necessarily victims of destruction, genocide, like
Right.
other
And
ancient
losing their
cultures,
traditions.
and losing their tradition or being missionized like that.
Yeah. Yes.
So they're a remnant from a long time ago,
Mm-hmm.
this
Mm-hmm.
knowledge.
So you spoke about, or you've spoken in different ways right now about how we can get to know what our goals are, what we're truly here to be connected with and to represent on the planet. How do you do readings for people? How do people get to discover what goals are aligned with them?
Yes, I do readings. I'm moving more these days into empowering people to read their own charts, to
Mhm.
learn more about the system of Vedic astrology, because quite frankly, since the pandemic, we astrologers we're like the cosmic essential workers. I mean, my my calendar is just so I can't reach all the people that I want to reach. So
Right.
I really want to encourage people to just learn, at least to read their own charts, and to um, get access to this knowledge in that way. So I often teach um, webinars, free webinars, and trainings.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're interested, you can go to my website, risingstarrastrology.com, and uh, check out what my latest webinars for learning Vedic astrology are. Right now, by the time this airs, the one that I'm teaching this coming Sunday will already have passed, but the recordings will be available, so people can access them that way.
Oh, that's a wonderful way of being able to extend the knowledge and bring it out to more people.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
important, because I think the most important question that any of us can ask in our life
Mm-hmm.
is, who am I and why am I here?
Yes. And those are age-old questions, and
Perennial.
we don't get to answer them and say, oh well, now I know and I'm done.
No, no. We're infinite beings, right?
Exactly. Hmm. There are so many things I want to still ask you about. And I know we need to come to a close.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll just have to have you back.
Oh, I would love that. I'm so delighted to meet you, Laurie. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to connect with a kindred soul.
Absolutely. And I feel like we come from different aspects of things, and that was what makes it so exciting. And that's part of
Mhm.
what I want to do more and more in the world is to bring together groups of people so that whatever we're needing to bring to the world, we can seed each other
Yes.
into for these new things to come into being.
Yes. And in that regard, there's a really beautiful expression in Sanskrit, ekam sat vipra bahudha vadanti. It means truth is one, but the wise, the vipra, the ones who can see beyond the surface, call it by different names. Truth is one, the wise call it by different names.
Beautiful.
So that's, I think, a great example of that today in our
Mhm.
conversation.
Yes, I love it. So again, before we go, you said risingstar.astrology.com for people who
Yes.
want to know more about Vedic astrology. And your website, your other website?
My website is drkatyjane.com, and it's KatyJane.com, drkatyjane.com.
And what can people find there?
They can find all of my courses that I teach on Sanskrit, and also I'm into the traditions of the goddess. So I have courses on what's called Sri Vidya, or the sacred wisdom teachings of the goddess.
Mhm.
And they can find out about my Vedic astrology programs and memberships. And my blog is there also.
I'm
So
sure there'll
many
be a lot
things
of
are
pages.
there. So many things are there.
Great. Thank you again for being our guest today and for sharing yourself in such a beautiful way, and
Oh, thank
for
you.
working so hard to get back on with us.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I will not take a technological malfunction lying down.
And you clearly didn't. You know,
No.
and the energy was just there for us. So I didn't want to say, oh, let's just do it, let's just throw out what we did. And
No,
so
no, it's
thank you.
good. I'm glad we were able to reconnect
Yes.
and make it all happen today.
Thank you.
Yay. I feel like I made a new friend.
Me too. Thank you, Dr. Katy Jane.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thanks everybody for listening.
Mm. Well, and I'll just to echo that, thank you for being with us today at Wisdom Talk Radio. Join us here regularly for more wisdom, discovery, and illumination. Remember, you can find us on your favorite place to listen to podcasts. And if you've enjoyed listening today, please leave us a review, because that helps more people access the wisdom and to transform the world. For more about fast tracking your ideas to creation and revenue, find me, Laurie Seymour, over at the BacaInstitute.com.
Thanks for joining us here at Wisdom Talk Radio. We wish you well in your conscious explorations. For more information and to join in the conversation, our website is wisdomtalkradio.com or at Wisdom Talk Radio on Facebook.